I'm not really here to ask if I think on some level I already know the answer. And frankly, I'm not sure I care. I'm here to document, to put this all down in one place, so I don't feel like I'm losing my mind. Maybe I am. You tell me. It started subtly. My wife Anna and I have been married for 4 years, together for 6. The first 3 years were good. Not movie perfect, but solid. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our future plans mapped out on a bar napkin somewhere. But about 6 months ago, a switch flipped. She became distant, encased in a layer of cool indifference that I couldn't penetrate. The easy intimacy we shared evaporated, replaced by a polite, almost formal courtesy you'd show a stranger. I tried talking to her multiple times. I'd ask if she was okay, if I'd done something, if work was stressful. Her answers were always dismissive, clipped. She'd tell me I was imagining things, that I was being needy. The conversations would go nowhere, ending with her sighing and retreating into her phone, leaving me standing in the middle of the room feeling like an idiot. The real warning sign, the one that should have been a blaring air horn, came about 2 weeks ago. We were in the kitchen, and the silence was so heavy you could have cut it with a knife. I made one last-ditch effort. I told her I felt like she was a million miles away, and that I was scared we were falling apart. She didn't even look up from chopping vegetables. She just said with a chilling lack of emotion that I had nothing to worry about. Then she added the kicker. She told me that even if something was happening, it wasn't like I could do anything about it anyway. My ego, my heart, whatever was left of my sense of self in that marriage just shriveled up. I didn't say another word. I turned around, walked out of the kitchen, and went to sleep on the couch. I didn't want to be next to her. It felt like sleeping next to a hostile foreign entity. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of her getting ready. She emerged from our bedroom, dressed to the nines, a dress I hadn't seen before, heels, full makeup. It was 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. She works from home in marketing. Her usual attire is designer sweatpants. She breezed past the couch, not even a glance in my direction, and left. The scent of her expensive perfume hung around longer than she had for months. I knew with a certainty that settled like a rock in my gut that something was fundamentally broken. I steeled myself for the worst and went to work. The entire day was a void. No texts, no calls, not even a meme sent out of habit. That was unusual. Even during our worst fights, the digital threat of our lives remained. By the time I left the office, a cold dread had set in. I drove home, rehearsing speeches in my head. Ultimatums, pleas, angry accusations. I was ready for a fight, for tears, for something. Anything other than the Cold War we'd been living in. I pulled into the driveway and noticed the lights were on upstairs. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. Then I heard it, a muffled laugh from upstairs, followed by the distinct sound of a glass bottle clinking, and then shattering on a hard surface. My first thought was a break-in. My heart hammered against my ribs. I grabbed the aluminum baseball bat I keep by the door for this exact, albeit imagined, scenario. I crept up the stairs, my knuckles white on the grip of the bat. The sounds were coming from our bedroom. The door was slightly ajar. I could hear music now, low and thrumming. I took a deep breath, kicked the door open, and prepared to confront a burglar. The scene that greeted me was not a burglary. It was something far more surreal, far more violating. The air was thick with the smell of sweat, alcohol, and something cloyingly sweet. And there, in the middle of our bedroom, was my wife. She was completely naked, perched on the edge of our bed, and she wasn't alone. There were 3 men in the room with her. All of them were also naked. One was standing by the window, another was rifling through our mini fridge, and the third was lying on the bed, smiling up at her. They all froze when I burst in. The guy at the fridge dropped a bottle of craft beer, which explained the shattering sound. For a second, nobody moved. It was like a bizarre, terrible diorama. The bat felt heavy and useless in my hands, and the only use of that bat I could imagine would have ended with felony charges. What was I going to do? Fight 3 naked men while my wife watched? Anna was the first to break the silence. She looked at me, not with shock or shame or fear, but with pure, unadulterated annoyance, as if I were the one who had just walked in on her private moment. She had the nerve to roll her eyes and tell me to get out. She said it was a private party and I was killing the vibe. I was so stunned I couldn't even form a word. I just stood there gaping. The men were starting to get cocky now that they saw I wasn't going to start swinging. They were smirking, whispering to each other. I felt a heat rise in my chest, so intense I thought I might pass out. I backed out of the room, closed the door, and walked back downstairs. In a daze, I sat on the couch, the bat still in my hands. I just sat there for 45 minutes. I could hear them upstairs. The music got louder. I heard laughter, moans, and the rhythmic thud of our headboard against the wall. Each sound was a fresh stab of humiliation. I didn't move. I just listened, letting the rage bake. Finally, I stood up. I walked to the front door, opened it, and stepped outside into the cool night air. I needed to breathe. I thought about getting in my car and just driving until I ran out of gas. But then a new feeling washed over me. It was a clarity so sharp it felt like a shard of glass in my brain. I turned around and walked back inside just as the bedroom door opened upstairs. The three men came trooping down the stairs, pulling on their clothes. They were laughing, high-fiving. They saw me standing in the foyer and paused. They had that smug, arrogant look of men who think they've gotten away with something. One of them, a guy with a stupid man bun, deliberately shouldered past me on his way out, muttering something about me being a buzzkill. I didn't do anything. I just stood there, my face a mask of stone, and watched them leave my house. A minute later, Anna came downstairs. She was wearing my favorite silk robe. She had a glass of wine in her hand and a smirk on her face. I finally found my voice. I asked her what the hell that was. I asked her who those men were. I asked her why. She took a slow sip of her wine, looked me up and down with utter contempt, and said it was none of my business. She told me she was tired of our boring vanilla life and she needed to feel alive. She said she would have tried to talk to me about opening our marriage, but I was too insecure and possessive. This was news to me. I started to argue, to yell, but I never got the chance. She just laughed a high hysterical sound that didn't sound like her at all. Then she flicked her wrist and threw the entire glass of red wine in my face. It dripped down my chin and onto my shirt. She laughed again, turned and sashaded back up the stairs, leaving me soaked and shaking in the foyer. I should call my best friend Matt. He's been my rock for 30 years, but I can't because Matt hated Anna from day one. He told me she was selfish and manipulative. He told me I was making a mistake. Calling him now would mean admitting he was right, and my pride can't take that. Not yet. So, I'm writing this instead. I haven't slept. I've just been sitting here replaying it all, and I've come to a conclusion. She was right about one thing. There's nothing I can do about what happened. But there is a hell of a lot I can do about what happens next. She wanted to feel alive. Fine. I think it's time I helped her and her new friends feel something else entirely. Update 1. 1 week later. Well, it's been a week and things have escalated in a way I didn't see coming. Apparently, I'm now being framed for a man's death, but let's back up. After I posted last week, I spent a full day in a fog of pure, unadulterated rage. I didn't go to work. I just sat in my house, which no longer felt like my house, and plotted. Anna came and went as if nothing had happened, treating me like a piece of furniture she was mildly annoyed with. The silence from her was more infuriating than any argument could have been. My initial revenge plans were crude. I admit it. I was thinking/tires, angry calls to their employers, maybe a glitter bomb package. But then I realized that was beneath me. It was messy, and it could be traced. I needed something surgical, something that would dismantle their lives with precision. Anna wanted to feel alive. I decided the best way to facilitate that was to strip away everything that made her life and the lives of her playmates comfortable. I started with some light reconnaissance. Thanks to Anna's complete lack of discretion, she had tagged all three of them in various social media posts from months ago. It took me less than an hour to get their full names: Jacob, Brendan, and Finn. A little more digging gave me their workplaces. All three were middle management types in tech and finance. They had cultivated images of respectable, ambitious young professionals. Perfect. The higher you build your pedestal, the harder you fall. My first target was Finn. He was the one who had been lying on my bed, the smuggest of the bunch. I found out he worked at a financial firm downtown. My plan was simple. Just watch. I wanted to understand his routine, his habits. So, last Tuesday evening, I drove downtown and parked across the street from his office building. I just sat in my car listening to a podcast and watched. It was around 7:30 p.m. when he finally came out. He looked stressed, talking animatedly on his phone. He got into his car and drove off. That was it. I went home. I didn't follow him. I didn't do anything. I just established a baseline. The next day, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was a detective. My blood ran cold. He told me that there had been an accident the previous night. Finn's car had gone off an overpass. He was dead. Dead. The detective was calling me because my number was one of the last he had been in contact with, or rather Anna's number, which was on my family plan. My heart was pounding. I told him I didn't know the man and had no idea why he'd be contacting my wife. It was a lie, but what else could I say? That evening, Anna confronted me. She was pale, her hands shaking, but she wasn't sad. She was furious. She told me the police had spoken to her, and she knew I was responsible. I was baffled. I asked her what she was talking about. That's when she dropped the bomb. She said Finn had sent her a frantic text right before the crash. He had seen me. He told her my car was parked outside his office, and that I was just sitting there staring. He said I looked unhinged and that he was freaked out. He was speeding to get away from the area when he lost control of his car. She accused me of tampering with his vehicle, of somehow causing the accident. She screamed that I was a monster and that she was going to the police to tell them everything. I just stared at her. I knew I hadn't touched his car. To do that, I would have had to get into the secure corporate parking garage, which would be covered in CCTV cameras. My phone's location data would place me in my car across the street the entire time. I didn't tell her any of this, though. I let her think she had leverage. I just told her she was being hysterical and that I had no idea what she was talking about. I let her think her threat had scared me off. I needed to talk to someone. My pride was gone, vaporized by the sheer insanity of the situation. But suddenly, Matt called me. In my head, I thought I would tell him that something happened. I was getting prepared for the "I told you so." I was not prepared for his response. Before I could even get a word out, he cut me off. His voice was tense. He told me to sit down. He said he had something to tell me. He had been at a coffee shop in a neighboring town that afternoon, and he saw someone he recognized. It was Anna, but it was who she was with that made him call me. She was sitting at a table laughing and chatting intimately with my ex-wife, Jennifer. For context, Jennifer and I had a messy divorce 5 years ago. She was my college sweetheart, and she cheated on me. Then claimed the reason for our split was that I was filled with darkness. Yes, she said, and I quote, "Ben, he is filled with darkness. He has something dark to him. Not anger, not depression, something unsettling. My cheating wife and my cheating ex-wife, who have never met, to my knowledge, are now best friends." I thought things couldn't get any weirder. I was wrong. What in the seven circles of hell is going on? I got to catch up, man. Update 2. 5 days later, you tell your best friend of 30 years that your wife is cheating on you with multiple partners and might be trying to pin a man's death on you, and you expect a certain reaction. Matt did not disappoint. After he told me about seeing Anna and my ex-wife Jennifer together, I unloaded everything. The three guys, the wine in the face, my stake out, Finn's death, Anna's accusation, the whole sordid mess. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. Then he just said, "I'm coming over. Don't do anything stupid until I get there." An hour later, he was on my couch, the same couch I'd been sleeping on, and I was pacing. He was furious. Not the situation, but me. So much so, he witch-slapped me. He was angry that I hadn't called him sooner, that I had tried to carry this all myself. The "I told you so" was there, but it was overshadowed by a fierce protective loyalty. After he was done yelling, he looked at me, his face set, and said, "Okay." So we burn it all down together. The first thing we discussed was Jennifer. Her reappearance wasn't a coincidence. Matt had always said Jennifer was a master manipulator. Her reason for leaving me had always been so bizarrely vague. She told her friends I had a darkness in me. She'd say I wasn't depressed or angry, just dark. It was a narrative that made her the victim, escaping a brooding, potentially unstable man rather than the cheater she was. Hearing it now in the context of Anna's behavior felt less like a psychological diagnosis and more like a preemptive strike. They were building a case against me. We decided we needed more information. We were no longer just reacting. We were going on the offensive. Matt has a buddy who does private investigation work on the side. Mostly boring insurance fraud stuff. But he has the skills and the software. For a case of beer and a promise to help him move next month, he agreed to do some digging. Our first order of business was figuring out the Anna-Jennifer connection. We started by tailing them. It felt ridiculous, like something out of a bad movie, but it was surprisingly effective. We followed them from their coffee meeting to a high-end yoga studio and then to a bar later that week. They were thick as thieves. The PI friend also did a workup on their digital communications. They were in constant contact, members of the same private online groups dedicated to female empowerment through sexual exploration, which seemed to be a sanitized term for what they were doing. The PI called them freak-offs, which was his term for organized group encounters. While the PI dug into that, Matt and I focused on the other two musketeers, Brendan and Jacob. We needed leverage, and we needed it fast. We built complete profiles on them, addresses, job titles, work histories, even their favorite bars from their social media check-ins. It turned out both of them had a penchant for recreational pharmaceuticals, something they were foolish enough to allude to online. They presented themselves as clean-cut corporate climbers, but their digital footprint told a different story. We started gathering screenshots, archiving everything. We had our angle. The final piece of the puzzle was getting inside Anna's inner circle. I needed someone who knew her secrets, her vulnerabilities, and there was only one candidate, her best friend, Rachel. Rachel and Anna have been friends since childhood. But I've always sensed a strange dynamic there. Rachel has always been quietly resentful of Anna's more glamorous life. And more importantly, Rachel has had a very obvious, very poorly concealed crush on me for the entire time I've known her. At parties, she'd find reasons to touch my arm, laugh a little too hard at my jokes, and stare at me when she thought I wasn't looking. It always made me uncomfortable. Now it made her an asset. I knew using her was a morally gray, okay, morally black move, piss off. But I was past caring about the ethics of my tactics. This was war, and she was a potential source of invaluable intelligence. I scrolled through my contacts and found her number. My thumb hovered over the call button. This was a line I hadn't crossed yet. Actively manipulating someone who, as far as I knew, was an innocent bystander. But then I thought about the headboard banging against my wall and the smirk on Anna's face as she threw wine at me. My resolve hardened. I sent Rachel a text. Just a simple, "Hey, long time no see. We should catch up." She replied in less than a minute. The game has officially changed. The tables are turning, and they are not going to anticipate anything that's about to happen. Update 3, 10 days later. Revenge, as it turns out, is a dish best served via anonymous HR complaints. The last 10 days have been a blur of cold, calculated action. And I have to admit, there's a grim satisfaction in watching dominoes fall when you're the one who set them up. First, we dealt with Brendan and Jacob, the other two naked guys from the Lifetime. Tantalizingly traumatizing freak-off scene. Matt and I drafted two carefully worded anonymous emails. We sent one to the head of HR at Jacob's tech company, and the other to Brendan's direct supervisor at his finance firm. The emails were masterpieces of corporate concern trolling. We didn't make wild accusations. We simply stated that we were concerned colleagues who had reason to believe that their stellar employees' extracurricular activities might be in violation of the company's code of conduct, specifically regarding their substance use policies. We attached a few heavily redacted but suggestive screenshots from their private social media accounts and politely suggested that a random drug test might be in order to clear up any unfortunate misunderstandings. It worked better than we could have ever hoped. Both companies, terrified of liability and eager to maintain their pristine public images, called Jacob and Brendan in for a chat. As we suspected, both of them were frequent users of substances that don't play. Well, with corporate drug tests, within 48 hours, both had failed their tests spectacularly. Jacob was fired immediately for cause. Brendan was given the option to resign, of which he took. 2 down. Jacob, my favorite, got a humiliating treatment. Even I wouldn't have done that to somebody. So, it turns out he had joined the company he was in after a lot of negotiations and after throwing a lot of tantrums, and he was getting a VIP experience from them. Paid commute, rent paid, hotel bookings, trips, all-time check-in, and whatnot. This was on top of his 600,000 param salary. His supervisor forced him to take the test in front of them, as in to use the cubicle, but with the gate open. Brutal, absolutely ruthless. He was humiliated, yelled at, fired, lost his privileges, and ruined his rep in the corporate world. Next was Finn. He was already gone, but his memory lingered. His company had put out a statement calling him a valued member of their team, a loving husband, and a pillar of his community. That didn't sit right with me. This pillar of the community was one of the men who had violated my home and my marriage. So, we sent another anonymous package. This one went to the CEO of his company, and in a move that even Matt thought was cold, to his grieving widow. The package contained printouts of the freak-off group chats, where Finn discussed his exploits in graphic detail, including his plans for the night he died. We didn't add a note. The evidence spoke for itself. The company quietly removed its tribute page. I don't know what his widow did, and I don't want to know. We didn't disrespect the dead. He got buried fine. But I did cremate the image of the dead. Come get with me. While this was happening, I was working on Rachel. It was the most distasteful part of this whole plan and the most effective. I met her for coffee. I played the part of the heartbroken, confused husband to perfection. I told her I was lost, that Anna had changed into someone I didn't recognize. Rachel soaked it up, her eyes full of a sympathy that was quickly morphing into something more opportunistic. Over the next week, I escalated. I texted her, flirted with her, fed her a steady diet of compliments and vulnerability. I emotionally blackmailed her, telling her she was the only one who truly understood, the only one I could talk to. I made her feel like my savior, but I wasn't getting what I needed. So, I went for the kill. I told her I couldn't stop thinking about her, that I was developing feelings for her. But I was in a complicated situation. I made a promise I knew I'd have to keep. I told her that if she helped me get the proof I needed to get out of my marriage cleanly, I would be hers. Especially for that one passionate night she had been dreaming about for years. I told her I'd end things with Anna and we could see where things went. She caved completely. She gave me everything. She forwarded me emails, gave me access to shared photo albums, and told me about Anna and Jennifer's plan. They were trying to document my erratic and controlling behavior to build a case for a divorce settlement that would leave me with nothing. They wanted to paint me as an abuser. Rachel's information blew that narrative out of the water. It was a treasure trove of evidence of Anna's infidelity, her financial deception, and her calculated campaign against me. Armed with an arsenal of irrefutable proof, I hired the most ruthless divorce attorney I could find. Yesterday, we filed. Anna was served at the yoga studio she goes to with Jennifer. I expected a storm. I expected screaming, threats, and accusations. What I got was silence for 5 hours, followed by a sudden, desperate flood of texts and voicemails. The woman who threw wine in my face and told me to get out of my own bedroom, while she entertained 3 other men, is now blowing up my phone with frantic apologies, declarations of love, and desperate pleas to just talk. Funny how a divorce petition that includes a mountain of evidence of infidelity can change the mood. She's not sorry for what she did. She's sorry she got caught. And I suspect there's a very specific reason for her sudden change of heart. Regardless, she ain't getting what she wanted. Their plan took a detour and crashed into a tree worse than Paul Walker. Rip, though. It's a downhill slope for them. And I don't feel guilty about this one bit. Not about anything. Final update. 3 weeks later. Hello, Reddit. Guess who came crawling back and apologizing? For anyone wondering why my wife suddenly developed a conscience, it's amazing what the threat of losing an MX Black card can do for a person's moral compass. The final chapter of this saga has been messy, but deeply, deeply satisfying. Anna's frantic apologies were, as I suspected, entirely motivated by money. I'm a software engineer with a very comfortable income, and she hasn't worked a real job in 3 years, preferring to run a lifestyle consulting business that mostly consisted of her spending my money. My lawyer made it clear that given the evidence of flagrant infidelity, she would be entitled to absolutely nothing. No alimony, no house, no car. The prospect of having to support herself sent her into a tailspin. But I wasn't done. Anna has an immigrant mother who is the matriarch of their family. A proud, deeply traditional woman who sacrificed everything to give her children a life in this country. Anna had always painted me as the perfect supportive husband to her. So, I paid her mother a visit. I sat in her pristine living room, respectfully laid out all the evidence, the texts, the photos, the plans Anna had made with Jennifer, and explained calmly and without malice what her daughter had done. The color drained from her face. She was horrified, not just by the infidelity, but by the shame it brought upon their family. She was also terrified. She told me in a hushed, panicked voice that my financial sponsorship was a key part of their family's residency status. A contentious, ugly divorce, citing moral turpitude could, in her mind, jeopardize everything. She assured me Anna would not be a problem. The phone call I received from Anna later that day was a choked, tearful mess. She agreed to all my terms. Then there was Rachel. I had made a promise and I kept it. It felt cold and transactional. We met at a hotel. It was awkward and devoid of any real passion. I was a means to an end for her and she was the same for me. I left before she woke up. I found out later that her long-term on-again, off-again boyfriend found out, and it ended their relationship for good. I don't feel good about it, but I don't feel guilty either. She made her choice. She traded her loyalty for a chance with me, and it backfired. Collateral damage. With the divorce settled, I turned my attention to the remaining loose ends. Jacob, unemployed and furious, tried to get belligerent. He found me at a bar one night and tried to square up, shouting about how I'd ruined his life. I didn't even have to say a word. The security at the club, where I am a regular, recognized me and physically threw me out onto the street. He later tried to file a harassment complaint against me. Matt, ever the loyal wingman, showed up to the mediation with the drug test report from Jacob's former employer. The complaint was dismissed, and Jacob was portrayed as an irrational, erratic individual with a drug problem. Jennifer was the final piece. The information from Rachel included conversations where Jennifer bragged to Anna about getting away with something years ago. She mentioned how she'd keyed my classic car during our divorce proceedings. But she said more than that. She'd laughed about how she didn't just key it. She'd had help from our old neighbor Combs, a man I now realize was intensely jealous of me to do something far worse. They had cut the brake lines. It was something I'd reported to the police at the time, but it was dismissed as random vandalism with no leads. With this new information, my lawyer got the old case file reopened. Faced with a felony charge, Jennifer took a plea deal. She confessed to everything, and in exchange for a lighter sentence, she implicated Mays, who is now under a full-blown investigation. She lost the executive position she held at her father's company, and her reputation is in tatters. She's likely going to serve time. So, here we are. The dust is settling. My divorce is final. Anna is living with her mother, stripped of her lifestyle and her pride. Brendan is still, from what I hear, sulking in unemployment. Jacob is a pariah. Finn's legacy is permanently tarnished, and Jennifer is trading her power suits for a prison uniform. Last night, Matt came over. The house is quiet now. It feels like mine again. We sat on the back porch, the same porch where Anna once told me I was being insecure, and drank a very expensive bottle of bourbon. We didn't talk much. We just watched the sunset. He raised his glass and said, "To the darkness." I clinked my glass against his. My ex-wife said I had a darkness in me. Maybe she was right. But she and Anna made one critical mistake. They thought my darkness was a weakness they could exploit. They never considered that it might just be a tool waiting for the right occasion. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole? Honestly,